What's up, everybody? This is kind of an emergency episode of the Coast to Coast podcast, in a sense that we're a little early from our schedule, but we owed you an episode this week anyway, so you can take this however you want to take it. I'm Joey Powell. This is the Coast to Coast from InsideCarolina.com. We are brought to you by Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity. With me are the two guys that make this show what it is, Sean Moran, Sherrell McMillan. We called this somewhat of an emergency podcast because North Carolina got a commitment today. As Sherrell was going back and forth between watching Moran Hampton run for roughly 9 touchdowns. It's an unofficial stat. I have not verified that in the box score. He actually was at Davidson Day seeing Isaiah Denis give his commitment to the North Carolina Tar Heels. You may remember we've talked about Isaiah on this show a little bit. But he is a 6'5" lead guard. I believe he plays a little bit of both right now at his school, but he's a big kid, and he's a top 50 recruit. I want to start with the way we normally do this, and I usually kind of throw to Sherrell and say, hey, Sherrell, how did this go down? So in keeping with typical form, Sherrell, hey, how did this go down?
Well, it started back, I think, in July. He was a player that North Carolina had on their radar, but they hadn't quite pulled the trigger on an offer, and it was getting pretty late in the class to do so. And then in late July, it felt like it came out of nowhere because they were deep in it with Jasper Johnson at the time, had really started to go after Braylon Mullins, and then the offer comes to Isaiah Denis. And I guess what we found out was that he lied to Carolina immediately. There was a lot of, is he going to commit to UNC right now? Right after the offer. Obviously, he decided not to do that. And I think from there, it was just building a relationship with Hubert Davis and Jeff Lepo, who were his assistant coaches. Excuse me. They took a lot of trips down to Davidson Day once the fall recruiting period started. I think it was started on September 6th or 7th, something like that. And so they've been down there, I think 3 or 4 times each since then, just building a relationship. And as Hubert Davis is becoming one of his favorite phrases, there is a want and a need for Isaiah Denis at UNC. And I think ultimately the fact that they really needed a second guard, and then after Braylon Mullins committed to UConn, it was kind of Isaiah Denis or nothing, and then they really put on kind of the full court press from there. So I think between some influences in his family, I think wanting to be closer to home, UNC's ability to potentially have a lot of guard openings next season, all that was attractive to him and is why he ultimately ended up at UNC.
This might draw some feelings from folks one way or another, and I'm okay with that, but I am of the mindset that North Carolina, unless the program just falls off a cliff in our lifetimes, I feel like North Carolina should always at least be the final 2 for the best player in the state. And Sherrell, do you feel like Denis is probably going to end up being one of the top 3 players in his class in North Carolina?
Yeah, for sure. It's him and actually Caden Mingo, who actually committed to Penn State. I think it was yesterday or today, Saturday. I think it might have been Friday. So those 2 are kind of at the top.
So for all of the hand wringing that folks have had around this, this recruit and that recruit and the other recruit, here we sit in early November with North Carolina having their backcourt essentially covered. And as we've talked about on this show, it's hard to anticipate what next season's backcourt is going to look like based on who returns and who doesn't. But as Sherrell's eloquently said many times before, that R.J. Davis will no longer be at North Carolina. Some players have plans for being one and done. Elliot Cadeau's trajectory could go a million different ways. So either way, there's going to be playing time. Sean, one of the things I want to come to you about is asking you, I saw a really good kind of bulleted write-up from our guy, Adam Finkelstein. Yes, I just gave him the Corey Alexander treatment because basketball season's here, y'all. But Fink did a really good kind of bulleted write-up about what North Carolina is getting in Isaiah Denis. And I think one of the points he made was that, he seems to be really strong with the ball and that his handle could use some work, but he's got enough vision at this point to become a lead guard. Sean, where I would ask you is how much of that does he need to work on? Do you think, if he were to walk onto campus immediately, would he be able to keep up with the pace of ACC play, or are there certain things that he's really got to hone in on if he wants to contribute in his freshman season.
I think contributing his freshman season. I mean, for the most part, when you're looking at guys that are outside of the even the top 25, for the most part, it's going to be a struggle, or there are going to be some challenges for guys contributing in a major way, even if they are in the top 50. I think there's a lot of things to like about Dennis, as Adam laid out. I think the one interesting thing when you look at him and Dixon is, I would say right now they're both. You talk about combo guards, but I would give them a two guard label before I give them a point guard label.
That's fair.
I think from Dennis's perspective, I think he does handle the ball. He can operate in the pick and roll. I think he can improve the ball handling. You don't want assist numbers to be the be all and end all, but in EYBL, he averaged 2.3 assists per game. So definitely not something from a lead guard perspective that you would normally see. But I think from what he does well, one, he has size, so that's a thing that UNC has not had from the guard position in quite some time. The size, when he does get in the open court, he kind of showcases that athleticism. But I'd say it's almost like a Caleb Love freshman year athleticism, where when he's in the open court, it's pretty impressive. But when there's defenders in the way, it's maybe not. He's not getting quite the same lift. And then the other interesting thing, especially when compared with Dixon, Dixon's a standout shooter. Dennis was a standout shooter. He shot 36% from EYBL, but when he was doing catch and shoot situations, he was 42%. And I think this is what Adam had, but 92nd percentile in AAU. So once again, something probably one of his top traits. So I think when we are looking, not really at freshman year, because I think you'll be able to intermix who's playing with those guys, but if you're imagining them as a starting backcourt together at some point in the future, who is that lead guard? I think will be the question.
Well, I'll jump in, Joey, and I can say that I think there's a plan for Dixon to play more lead guard even at UNC, or continue to develop. I think that is going to happen. Whether or not he does it seamlessly, we'll see. But there's definitely an idea of like, hey, let me get in there and really start to establish myself and see what it takes to be a lead guard. He thinks he can do it. He wants to do it. So I think we'll see what happens. But that's definitely down the line. But I do think that's part of the thought process.
And I think that's feasible for both of them. But the words "continue to develop" scare me, just because I think we've always heard that before, versus somebody like Elliot Cadeau coming in, who is a fully natural point guard. Obviously, to get today's game, you don't need as much that pure passer. You can have the combo guards and operate in pick and roll, and especially with size. But I think we're seeing last year and ideally this year of how easy Elliot can make it for other players. So I think, especially Dixon, in terms of his how smart he is on the court, that can definitely happen. But when you're learning on the job, especially at this stage, is always a concern for me.
I've always been fascinated, and y'all have heard me say it before, about the size jump that players usually make going into their senior year of high school from a weight perspective. And right now, 6'5", big kid, but he still is fairly slight of frame. So you wonder how much that strength will be a need, and how much that benefits him to get a little stronger as he's going to take contact, especially if he's attacking the basket the way his game does now. Against the players he's playing, whether it's in AAU ball or whether it's when he's playing with his varsity team, he's not going against guys that are going to be able to knock him off the ball very much if he's making a straight line drive to the basket. So I think him putting on weight and filling out a little bit will be interesting to see how that strength is able to help him maybe elevate his game a little bit. Sherrell, any final thoughts about Isaiah Denis's game before we move on to some other stuff?
I thought, for one, I called him Dennis Dixon to his face. That's the first time, and it's going to happen
Dude.
76 more times. It's like, hey, I know you've talked to, or I called Derek Dixon, Dennis Dixon, to Isaiah Denis. But I was like, hey, you're going to play with Dennis Dickinson one day. He was like, what? I said, oh, yeah,
Huh?
there was a quarterback at Oregon back in the day. Anyway, I thought what was interesting is that basically everybody who does this, whether it was sources at Carolina, national recruiters, his high school coach, the athletic director, everybody used some form of the phrase, his best basketball is still ahead of him. And I think that's fair. I think it's also a little bit of code that maybe he's not quite ready to make a huge impact as a freshman. I mean, we'll see because there could be an opportunity. But I think it does speak to in the past, Carolina, it seems like it doesn't always get the burgeoning talents. A lot of the guys I feel like they've gotten maybe pre the last couple of years have been already established and you kind of know where they are. So it's different for UNC to get one of these guys who a year ago wasn't really on anyone's radar and is now, um, a top 50 player. So again, I just thought it was interesting. Almost everybody used some form of the phrase "best basketball ahead of him."
That is interesting, especially when you consider the cross section of folks that you've likely talked to about his game over the course of his recruitment for North Carolina. Sean, I'm going to assume that you have something coming for IC subscribers very soon on Mr. Dennis.
Yeah, this week there should be the standard scouting report and video that'll be put together on Dennis just to take a look. And I mean, there's some good stuff on YouTube already in terms of his more on his strengths across both EYBL, regular EYBL, and then Peach Jam. But we'll take a look at what he does well and what he ideally needs to improve upon.
Assuming he will matriculate like most freshmen do in the second semester of summer school, or at least they're here by then. I think that's usually their drop dead time. But assuming he is here for summer school, Sherrell, I'm going to go ahead and assume that Johnny T-Shirt will probably have some of his NIL stuff available for sale by the time football season starts next year. You feel like that's probably safe?
I think that's a fair assumption.
Yeah. So I'm just setting that up so that you guys know to be prepared for that at Johnny T-Shirt. I know you guys are all huge supporters and patrons of that fine establishment. We're big fans of theirs as well. They sponsor all of IC's content. They're actually really, really good human beings that work there. Alumni owned, locally operated, and even if they don't have had it in the store for you, they can get you stuff shipped lightning quick. I mean, just quick as a sneeze, and they will absolutely take care of you. Even if they don't have something that you're looking for, they can probably get it. If they don't have it or they can't get it, I'm going to go ahead and tell you to move on with your life. You'll probably be okay without whatever it is that Johnny T-Shirt doesn't have. Inside Carolina Premium subscribers know you get an extra 10% off the top. Make sure to use that code off the premium message boards the next time you call them. Save yourself some money. That way you can turn that savings back into other Johnny T-Shirt gear. You're welcome. Hashtag pro tip. All right, we're going to let the national guys drop some ads in here really quickly, and we will be right back with the second half of the show. We're going to preview real ball. We got real basketball coming up in a matter of hours as North Carolina will tip off their season very soon. I'm Joey Powell with Sean Moran and Sherrell McMillan on the Coast to Coast podcast on InsideCarolina.com. We're glad y'all are here. Thanks for making us a part of your podcast listening or YouTube viewing habits. Either way, I want to give everybody a huge kudos, right? I'm clapping for you. You can see me clapping for you if you're watching this on TV. You can't hear it because I don't have earphones on my hands, but I'm clapping for you because you guys have made it through the offseason. We now have real basketball to talk about, specifically North Carolina tipping off at home against Elon coming up this Monday night. It will be a late start, but if you're upset with the tip time, I'm going to make you happy and tell you that you've got Wes Durham on the call. Unfortunately, you also have Corey Alexander, Sherrell's guy. So get used to that, but nothing should make you feel like it's full season time other than hearing those two on the ACC network on Monday night. So first things I'll say, Sherrell, I know you need to make a correction before we dive into this Elon preview. Okay, he's waving me to move on. That was great radio. Anyway, so getting ready for the Elon game, and I think that this is something that I've seen or heard from Hubert Davis. He mentioned, Sean, that Elon is a very good basketball team. And first off, I'm going to take him at his word because he's a coach. He does this for a living. He probably knows more about what Elon has coming back because I'm sure they've at least done some scouting so far. But I want to ask you, Sean, does it matter whether he's right or wrong? Does it matter how good Elon may or may not be? Do you think that there's, I don't know, any truth for it? Because I'm looking at a line right now of Carolina minus 28.5. So I'm going back to you, Sean. Does it matter that Elon's any good or not?
I think there are teams in the CA that in the past, I mean, look at College of Charleston that have given teams like UNC a game at least for a half or a little more than that. But I don't think Elon is going to be the one that does it. They have some returners and mixing in some transfers like everybody else. But in terms of that line right there, that's that's a 1 versus a 16, if not greater type of line. So we always talk about not overlooking whoever we're playing, but I think that comes a little more true once you're getting into ACC play. So I think for this, it's almost a continuation of the 2 exhibition games of getting everybody out, getting some playing time, seeing how they're mixing together, the full crowd of the Dean Dome behind them, but really just getting some reps together because going in on Friday is going to be a completely different scenario. But I think more for me, it's looking at how is UNC playing together, and obviously there are opponents that could provide a little bit of a tougher task, but Elon is not going to be the one that does it this year.
So Sherrell, all that aside, it is a game that matters in the record books now. We're past the exhibition portion of the season. I want to ask you, what's the most important thing for North Carolina to accomplish against Elon?
Before we go there, sorry, I had some computer issues. The correction I wanted to make was that not Caden Mingo, he's not from North Carolina, it's Caden Magwood, who is from North Carolina, who right now is actually ranked the number 1 player in the state, goes to Combine Academy, who coincidentally, Isaiah Denis and Davidson Day will open the season against on Tuesday. So just to clear that up. Okay. I think the most important thing for UNC is coming out healthy. You don't want to have anyone hurt after the first game of the season. And then just adapting to what Elon might try to do. I feel like John C. Smith also treated it like an exhibition, and they were content to just run up and down the court with North Carolina. And I don't think Elon's going to do that. I think they're going to try to win the game, and to win the game, they're going to slow down the tempo because they know it's probably going to be difficult to run with UNC and play at their pace. So this is their first real chance, I think, between the exhibitions to play a team whose job is going to be to limit possessions, because Memphis didn't really care about that. They wanted to get out and run too. So I'm curious to see how that works out. And I think as long as they come out with a win, as long as everybody's healthy, then it doesn't really matter moving forward. I don't expect them to win by 30. I would be surprised because I think there's going to be a lot of nerves for some of the new guys. I think there's going to be still some rotations that they're working through. And Elon, they're not, I don't know a ton about them, but they're going to put up a fight. And they've got some guys who played JUCO and some guys who played at other, Division I schools. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, come out healthy and adapt to playing someone who's not going to play at their tempo.
Sean, I'm not going to ask you to give me a starting 5 because I don't think that it matters. But is there a number of players that you want to see, say, get more than 3 minutes in the game?
Well, I mean, I want to see 10. From a 10 guys perspective, we talked about it on the larger podcast in terms of the depth that this team does have, and we know in the past that Hubert Davis has whether it's him relying or been forced to rely on 7 or 8 and not really going to the bench. But here's a great example of a game where ideally they can get a lead early. The traditional starters and bench players are getting key minutes in the second half, but then towards the end, ideally you're seeing the walk-ons come in. But at the same time, I think for me, just getting the freshmen, once again, the Dean Dome versus Fog Allen is going to be completely different, but want to see them just have their feet under them. They're going to be moving probably a little faster than their brains are processing things, but I think just being able to get them some action will be important. And then once again, I think it'll be interesting to see the big men now that the spotlight is on them. How is Washington doing? How has Van Allen Lubin? And you can go on down the list. And same thing in terms of Cade Tyson. This is unlike Memphis being his first TV appearance with UNC, I think this is a good test of where, a lower than Belmont type level. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's getting into double digits with a few threes. But once again, I think important for him to see the ball go through the basket, because come Friday it's going to be a different type of athlete with different type of size that he's going to be seeing.
And piggybacking off of what we talked about in the roundtable on Wednesday, I want to see how the rotation works out at the 4 specifically, as far as K. Tyson, Jalen Withers, Drake Powell. Probably those 3, I guess, will be the 3 folks we expect to play the most there. Just see how that rotation works out. If it is a rotation, who spends the most time there, all those sorts of things, because that's a position I'm really watching closely, I think, for the rest of the season, to be honest.
All right, well, Sean's, had to bite his tongue twice to talk about the game Friday at Allen Fieldhouse, so I guess we'll go ahead and let him go there. I think the biggest thing, obviously, than the step up in competition, but you're looking at Kansas as a team that, for most services is preseason number 1. They're returning 2 grad players in Hunter Dickinson and DeJuan Harris, who are both on the Armando Bacot and RJ Davis plan. So those guys have played a ton of college ball. They also have, the same typical shifts in that they've brought in some transfer players. Zeke Mayo, 6'4", out of South Dakota State, an absolute microwave that's able to score the ball. Rylan Griffin, who North Carolina fans should know because he played at Alabama, is now suiting up and will probably start for Kansas. And then also KJ Adams at the other forward spot. Again, a big body, 6'7", 235. I don't know that he's ever been the focal point of their offense, but will provide them some valuable minutes this year. And Sean, you kind of tiptoed into it, so we'll stay here. The size difference is going to be huge for North Carolina, specifically for Jalen Washington. We've talked about how small North Carolina's guards are. I think that's going to be kind of the same for most of the season. But I don't know that there's many lineups in the country that North Carolina is going to see that will have kind of the routine post player like Hunter Dickinson has, or like Hunter Dickinson is. So I'm coming to you first with this. How do you feel like North Carolina will stack up against Kansas, recognizing that, even if Hunter Dickinson doesn't go off, there's other guys on that team that are capable of filling it up?
I think, from Kansas's first possession, they're going to go into Hunter in the post, and he's going to try to back down Washington for his little hook shot, and then potentially do the too small gesture as he runs down the court with the crowd going crazy. But I think, for both Dickinson and even Adams, because Adams, while shorter, is so strong and athletic. And I think the good thing is he doesn't pose a threat from 3, so they're not going to be spacing the court out with really, 4 wide, because he can drive, but you're not going to be worried about him as a shooter. But from Washington's perspective, can he hold up, or at least just make Dickinson take some tough shots? Even if he's hitting his first few, just how is he guarding him? Is he making life tough? Do they have to go to somebody else with a little more strength right away? So Kansas is going to try to stress test that immediately, and I think at the same time they're going to try to stress test K. Tyson if he's the one starting at the 4, just in terms of his strength and athleticism. I think his length will help, but I think Adams, from that perspective, is going to try to attack early on. So I think it's going to be really interesting, because it's, from where UNC is weak at that 4 or 5, that's going to be where Kansas tries to go early. And for the most part, there's not going to be too many other teams that will have that specific focus, I'd say, right from the get-go.
Yeah, when I think about KJ Adams, I think a little bit of Eric Dixon, the kid from Villanova that just absolutely gave North Carolina hell last year. I don't know that those guys play the same, but I do think there's a lot as far as their build and the way they like to, back down an opponent. Could be something that North Carolina sees. Sherrell, I mentioned it in the roundtable the other night, and I'm excited to hear me reference Mark Gottfried. But this is a situation where, Hunter Dickinson is actually going to have to play out. Do you think this might be a time where Hubert Davis actually can can try his lineup versatility against a team that we all expect will be a top 5 team come late March? Do you think you might see some movement of Van Allen Lubin trying to get Hunter Dickinson to kind of guard him out on the perimeter? Do you think that might be a situation where North Carolina runs some things through Cade Tyson early to get KJ Adams to come out and try to chase him around? How do you feel like North Carolina can counter the size that they know they're going to see against Kansas on Friday night?
Well, it's interesting because typically in this kind of matchup, we've had, 3 or 4 months of data to pour over. To say,
you have nothing right now, sir. Nothing.
Right. Usually it's like, okay, they're not good at pick and roll. People spotting up in the corner. They allow 75% from. We'd have something. So it's a new team for Kansas, pretty much. I mean, like you said, they return a couple guys, but it's a lot of transfers, a lot of young guys. So I think Carolina, this sounds cliche, but they're just going to do what they do. And what we know they want to do is push tempo. They want to be out in transition. They want to take a good amount of threes, and they want to put pressure on the Kansas defense, and they want to be able to defensive rebound. So, again, I think they'll try to do those things. It's easier said than done against some of the lineups that Kansas is going to throw at them. I would just, like I said, I would do what you do, see how it works. It's the second game of the season. There's no need to kind of throw the kitchen sink at it and try to reveal everything that you've been working on in the offseason. You do what you can. You play your game. Whatever happens, happens. You move on. I think the other thing that's interesting to me about the game, and maybe it's coincidental, I don't know exactly how many minutes they covered him, but if you look at probably the 2 worst games of R.J. Davis's career, DeJuan Harris was on one side of it. He definitely, I don't know if he had to cover the entire game, but he was there. I think that game was 4 for 20 or 5 for 17. And then
it was a little for a lot.
Right. And then Alabama last year, we know Griffin was on him several times. He's now at Kansas, and RJ was, I think that was the 5 of 20 game. So 9 of 37 with those guys on the other side. So I think this is one of those games where RJ Davis shows why he's the ACC Player of the Year and really comes out and is aggressive and is trying to get to his spots, not make up for those 2 games, but just get UNC started on the right foot. And that's another key. You just can't get down by 15, 10, 7, really in Lawrence Fieldhouse and expect to like come back and win. So they have to maintain contact. They can't let a 5-point lead become 12 in short order. So I think that's another thing, is just be steady and maintain through that first punch.
Well, Sherrell, I mean, to those points early in the season last year, UConn went to Fog Allen. It was one of the few games, they trailed for really the majority of the game and lost. But for RJ, I think we talked earlier this week on that, or at least that early on in the season, he's probably going to have to carry more of a load. I think a lot of us went under on that point total, maybe just slightly from what he was last year. But I would say early on, you're going to expect him to shoulder more of that load. But to your point, both DeJuan Harris, gave him trouble in the championship game with his wingspan, his length that he possesses, and whether he's on RJ or Cadeau, he's going to cause some problems. And then if it is Griffin, we saw what happened in the Sweet 16 with that size and length. So, it could be, I think it'll be a big game for RJ to show, hey, this is what, I struggled against last year, and this is what maybe my challenges this year against size and length, which once again won't happen that often, but it's going to be right there, week 1 for him to be able to go against. And I think if he is playing well and able to keep UNC in the game, almost letting everybody else come along with him, that can go to determining, will UNC come away with a victory?
There are some marquee programs in the state of North Carolina that won't play road games like this, especially these sorts of games on the road against this sorts of competition this early in the season. You have to kind of give Hubert Davis some credit for not being afraid of anybody. But we've talked earlier in the show, not tonight, but in past episodes, about the fact that North Carolina needs to win games like this. I don't know that this is going to be the one, just because there's a lot of expectation around Kansas, and we don't know how this North Carolina new system is going to pan out. But Sherrell, am I going too far, and am I being too, I guess, blasé about it to say that this is a game that even if North Carolina loses, they really don't lose?
It might be a little too blasé, but um, you know, it's a chance. It's an opportunity, like Greg mentioned on Wednesday, to go ahead and get a massive win that you know is going to be Q1 for the rest of the year. And it's probably too early. I know it's too early to talk about quads and all that stuff, but the reality is, the last few seasons, the narrative about UNC and about the ACC is made in November. So, like, yeah, Kansas is going to be a good team no matter what. We know that. We think Carolina is going to be a good team. Yes, we expect that. But the chances to beat good teams significantly drop after, I guess, like the middle of December. You don't have as many chances to get those. So if you can grab one in November, it'll kind of prop up your net rating the rest of the year. So it's an important game for that reason, but I don't think, it's not going to have a material difference on how UNC plays on February 15th, from the second game of the season. But it is important, but it's not the end of the world. And the other thing too, Joey, we're talking about why Carolina might not win. Kansas is it's a team with a lot of new players, and some of those players, to be frank, are a bit combustible. Let's put it that way and be nice. And it's a lot of egos. It's a lot of guys who are doing well in life. Let's put it that way, coming into a situation where they expect to kind of be the guy. And Dickinson has been the guy, but can the others who are coming in accept that? Will they accept cursory or ancillary roles? We don't know that. We haven't seen them all play together. We don't know what the rotations are going to look like. Every year when I come on here and talk about Carolina, I say, it's going to take some time, y'all. You got to build chemistry. You can't do it in the offseason, no matter how. You can build chemistry in the offseason, but on the court chemistry against real teams, you just can't do until you face it. So I think that's one way Carolina could win if they play with the tempo that we expect, if they're making some threes, and then if Kansas is just a bit discombobulated because they're not sure who's doing what yet. So that's something to watch out for too.
I mean, definitely all the pressure you would say is on the home team because it is a season opener.
You can't lose there.
They're coming back from having such a for them a down season where they just didn't have the success that they wanted or expected, and so it'll be interesting to see how they react just as much as it will North Carolina. And shout out to Sherrell for using the word ancillary. That is mid-season form right there, sir. There is no rust on you to be seen. Sean, I want to kind of ask you a similar question. Do you think that since North Carolina is trying to play a more free, up-tempo style of offense, that going on the road in a situation where all the eyes are going to be on the home team, do you think that actually might help them, considering that they've got some vets, they've seen this kind of stuff before, even if the young guys haven't?
I think it gives UNC an opportunity to be the aggressor in this situation. Kansas comes in with the home crowd, the experience and the size. But to Sherrell's point, there, a lot of those guys are very high usage players, so it could take a little bit of time. But I think playing up tempo is an advantage for UNC, especially at this point if they're well conditioned. If they're able to get some easy baskets, easy runouts, especially for a Washington, a Tyson, et cetera, the guys that, aren't as experienced. So I think that can definitely play a factor, especially from a confidence side with the crowd going crazy early on. If UNC knows, hey, this is what we've been doing every day in practice, we just got to keep pushing the ball, keep going, especially with Cadeau coming in, in that second year. So he's got that experience, and I think he could have a big game, even though Harris will cause him challenges and discomfort. But once again, if they're able to spread the court out a little bit, especially with Washington, that could create some opportunities to attack and push the ball. And I think what we did see in the exhibitions was they're able to push it without always using the dribble. So it goes back to if they can get some easy baskets, and also from a freshman perspective, I mean, it's been so long since UNC has beat Kansas. I think Rashad McCants, Raymond Felton, Sean May as freshmen, if I'm not wrong, in the preseason NIT. Sherrell can fact check that one, but key thing about that one was freshmen stepping up, and I think everything from Ian Jackson and Drake Powell, like this is a early time for them to step up and have that crowd that they're going against and step into the big time moment as guys that have their sights set on being one and done. So I think there are a lot of factors for UNC that are pros that we should be excited about and can look forward as differentiators for this game.
All right, fellas. Before we, Sherrell, you got anything you want to add to that? Sorry, you got the look on your face like you might have another altar call in you.
No, I was doing the math, and yeah, that was 22 years ago. I think the last time they beat Kansas, because let's have a fun little radio session. They lost in the Final Four, obviously. They lost in the second round of the tournament.
Yep.
They lost in the Elite Eights, and then they lost in the championship game.
So that would have been the preseason NIT with the Ty Lawson. Was that Ty Lawson's group, or was that?
No, that was McCants. That was
the 05 guys.
When Roy was still at Kansas.
Yeah. So the last one against Kansas, when Roy was there. Yeah.
And y'all are old.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go ahead and go on the record and say y'all are old. Well, guys, this is the last part of the show, and I want to make sure we give the kudos that we need to give. But specifically, I want to make sure we talk a little bit about Congruity HR. It is a new season, and so as you're thinking about first quarter of 2025 for your small or medium-sized business, you need to be focused on where you think you want to go, and you need to be making sure that you ignore all sideshow distractions and get somebody to help you with the efficiency that you have in your back office work. That means emailing Matt at congruityhr.com. Let Congruity come in and take a look at how you want to approach 2025. They may be able to save you some serious coin on your HR functions, the things that can really bog you down. Let those guys at Congruity handle it. Let them take care of that, and you can focus on driving revenue for 2025 and making your business better, which makes a better life for your employees, makes it better for you and your family. Everybody wins, right? Go ahead and do that. Hit up Congruity. Again, that's Matt at congruityhr.com. Shoot him an email. Tell him you heard me talking about him on the Coast to Coast podcast and say, hey, just thought I'd reach out. We're getting ready to start a new fiscal coming up soon, and I just wanted to see what you guys might be able to do for us going into 2025. You'll be glad you did. All right, guys, I need 2 cents, and because Congruity is always saving folks money, we've got 2 cents just laying around here. So, Sean, give me a penny.
All right. First penny goes to three-point shooting. Over the years, we always talked, are they making eight or more threes? Obviously not a 100% success record, but if they're shooting the ball well, and especially in a hostile environment, I think outside shooting is also a question mark outside of RJ and Tyson. So if you have, some guys that are hitting outside shots, and I think it'll be interesting to see how they are playing Trimble and Cadeau. I don't think it's going to be a full Alabama style, but I do expect pressure, but also playing off to a certain extent. So, is UNC the battle of the three? Is UNC shooting the ball well from three? Kansas had a lot of question marks from three last year. They brought in some guys that can shoot a little better, in Mayo and Griffin, but we know the inside is most likely going to favor Kansas. So, can UNC offset it from the 3-point line as well as attacking in transition?
I love it. Sherrell, I would also like a penny from you, sir.
I wouldn't double Dickinson. I would say, Jalen, good luck, Godspeed. Do what you need to do. And
come back with your shielder on it.
Yeah, and as always, choke everything else off. I just wanted Isaiah Denis' announcement. So we obviously went up there, and we'll hopefully have an Inside the Commitment story in the next few days. But it was just really cool for me to see the family, the environment that they had there, all the people from the school were there. It felt very 2004. Obviously, recruitments have changed a great deal since that time, but it was kind of a throwback. And it was also cool. I don't think his dad has made any secret that he's a big UNC fan. And so when I'm trying not to give away the Inside the Commitment, but basically when it happened, you saw the emotion on the dad's face because it was such a huge moment for him. And the mom as well, and his grandma too. So, just fun to be at. And again, it was kind of a throwback to a different time. Obviously, like I said, recruitments are different, but it was fun to see. They played Frankie Beverly and Mays afterwards too. There was like a cookout afterwards, like a little party. people were dancing on the Davidson Day lawn. It was
Before I let go.
Yeah, of course.
That's
it was
the
a whole thing.
go-to.
It was a DJ. Yeah, it was a DJ.
Wow. Well, look, an RIP to Frankie Beverly. Did he pass? I feel like he passed recently. Yeah. So one of the things, as there are a lot of parents that listen to the show, I am anticipating Sherrell's Inside the Commitment, because I think we can all relate a little bit to how we would feel if our kids were able to kind of strike a chord and end up doing something great at a place that meant a lot to us. And it sounds like that's kind of what happening with what was happening with the Denis family. All right, guys, I really appreciate it. Get everything done so we can hopefully get this in folks' feeds pretty quickly, so they can kind of take advantage of this as somewhat of an emergency pod. But yeah, sorry, a lot of football going on today too, and I know I had a radio show, and most of the other guys had football to cover. Sherrell was actually at Davidson Day, so sorry we couldn't get you this as soon as the commitment happened, but we will do better. We'll work on it, and we'll get back to you. Either way, we're glad that you guys have made us a part of your lives. We'll catch you next time here on the Coast to Coast Podcast. He's Sean Moran. He's Sherrell McMillan. I'm Joey Powell for Inside Carolina. We'll talk to you very, very soon.